Welcome back, everybody. It's another Sunday, so you know what that means. We are live with another episode of Growing with My Fellow Growers. It's 4 p.m. out here on the West Coast and 7 p.m. On the East Coast over there. I'm with a panel of amazing individuals, as always. I'm at Jack Greenstock on Instagram, where you can find me primarily, as well as Cannabuzz and Jack_Greenstock on Twitter. I see that we are officially going live on the YouTube. I'm going to make sure that the chat is going by typing a message and switching myself over to the live chat. But then I'm going to pass it over first to Spartan Grown. Welcome.
Thanks, Jack. I'm Spartan Grown. You can find me on Instagram at Spartan Grown, all one word. Or you can, if you don't have social media, you can shoot me out an email at Gmail, SpartanGrown@gmail, all one word, and I'll try to help you there. I'm organic grower here at home, and then at work I grow synthetically in cocoa at Mint Can Co.
We are always happy to have you. It looks like we're going to have a little bit of a short panel this evening so far. But next up, we have Matthew Gates.
Hey everyone. This is Matthew Gates. I'm Integrated Pest Management Specialist for those who don't know, and I have a YouTube channel, Zenthanol, where I will be commenting in chat, and I am here to answer your questions about integrated pest management, and you can check out a bunch of my content there, as well as on my Instagram at SyncAngel or on Twitter at SyncAngel.
Thanks again for joining us this week. Next up, we have the American one. You're muted, bud.
Sorry, I was looking for my headphones.
While we wait for the American one to get his headphones, there's a skunk that just sprayed outside my window or somewhere close by because it's being intaken through the fan and it smells. I personally love the smell, but it's very apparent and distinct. I don't know if it was.
It's so funny you say that because I feel the same way about stink bugs. I know that's sort of of course Matt would say that kind of a thing, but I feel like they smell like Fruity Pebbles or something. Like they have this weird smell that I associate with certain like sugary cereals.
That's interesting. So the American one, sorry for cutting you off. Welcome back.
No, I'm sorry for not being ready. Jack, panel, everyone in chat, it's great to be here. I'm the American one on YouTube and the American one _with_Akeens on the IG. And it's good to be here today and talk about cannabis.
We're always happy to have you. And it looks like we have Sour Diesel Tangy is going to be joining us here in just a second. I'm going to admit them to the room. I'm going to open up the store because before the show, for those who aren't privy to this, my connection on my computer was not working for some reason. And all of a sudden, within like 60 seconds of the show starting, I got connection on my computer and switched from my phone over to the computer. And here we are. So welcome. Without further ado, Sour Diesel Tangy, thank you so much for joining us this week.
Hey, what's up, Jack? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you well.
We can hear you good.
Okay, we're already live. I just ran in, kind of running around a little bit. Sorry if I'm late, everybody. Didn't have an opportunity to kind of rehearse anything, so here goes nothing. Sour Diesel Tangy joining again. Really appreciate the opportunity to jump in. Probably going to do a little bit of a tour. I talked to Jack a little bit earlier, had a lot of changes in the room. Legal Mass home grower, doing some madness, trying not to kill my legal limit of 12 plants here in Mass. So far, so good. Other than that, just happy to be here and looking forward to showing you guys a little bit around the grow.
We're looking forward to seeing it. I think a lot of the people here follow you on Instagram, and if they don't, maybe they remember you from the last time that you joined us. So it's nice to get the where are you now and hear about some of those updates. And I think the people are going to be excited to see what you've got going on because I've been following on Instagram. If the other individuals in the chat haven't, they're missing out. You've got a lot of really cool gear and different things going on over there. So I'm excited to hear about some of the updates.
Yeah, appreciate it. Hopefully we won't screw up the camera too bad or lose internet or
if it happens, it happens.
Yeah, we'll figure it out, man.
Life goes on. We'll toke on. Brandon Rust, shit's fucking firing off over there. I saw that little intro teaser I reposted on my story from that cult. is it cannabis culture? I can't remember the name of the fucking thing now, but
Culture and Cannabis.
yeah. So you're a little quiet. If you could turn up your mic setting maybe just a little bit,
Is
but
that a little bit better?
much better.
Okay, I had to turn the gain up.
Yep, there we go.
Yeah, I'm attracting a lot of attention. I guess people reach out to me constantly. They came out because they have a marketing distribution state in multiple states, but they don't actually have a farm, and so they wanted to possibly work together under our license on our farm because we have so much land. Also might be working with Grayskull. If you guys don't know who Grayskull the grower is, he's underground kind of legend. Gorilla Glue 4 wouldn't exist without him. So there's a couple people that we're probably working with. GW Smoke Break's gonna be coming out in July, and they're doing a document series, and they're gonna try to sell it to a like a television network company. So we're doing just I gotta just do character development and stuff for that. But if you're not familiar with me, I'm Brandon Rust. You can find my IG at rust.brandon. You can find links to both my farm, Black Label Organics, and my company, Bokashi Earthworks.
I'm digging the is it a Grateful Dead background behind you right now that we got going on?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Pretty fucking rad, man. I not that I don't like the Bokashi Earthworks one regularly, but that's a nice change of pace over there.
I actually, let me just maybe flip my computer around here if I can. I turned my garage, which I was doing my home grow in here, and I turned my garage into a office studio, so I had more room for packaging Bokashi, and that way my the rest of my house wasn't filled up with all kinds of random things.
That makes sense. Turn your basically garage into an office studio, which is going to benefit you in the long run for sure. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that way you can just, put on the helicopter pad on the top so that, you probably won't even need to drive anywhere at that point.
One day. If I ever have enough money to buy a helicopter, I'll make sure I take all my friends for a ride.
Yeah, let's go hog hunting on a helicopter. I still want to do that.
That would be pretty intense.
Let's go skiing.
I am going on vacation finally. I've been going nonstop. I think I had like 2-3 days off for the last maybe 16 months.
You're going to the islands, right? To Hawaii? That's where I actually flew in my first helicopter ride ever. It was fucking beautiful. I saw some waterfalls and crazy shit. After like the
wow.
whole Kobe thing, I am a little wary of choppers but he flew in tons and tons of choppers all the time. So, he's more likely to go down in one, if anybody. But unfortunate what happened to him and his daughter. But definitely a very cool way to fly. And I think it's mostly safe. And there's a lot of fucking badass choppers out there. So it's just a matter of time with all the grinding you're doing. Shit, keep putting that money aside, and maybe one day you'll be whipping around in a chopper with us. Bill Burr got a license and he flies one.
Yeah, I'm going out there to the North Shore, but right there in Waialusa is there's a garden. The people that I work with consulting, so they're going to have to kind of change the way that they're cultivating because the things in Hawaii are changing. So not for the better, not for the better for them anyway. So just got to figure some things out.
I've heard that Hawaii has been getting some interesting invasives, both plants and insects lately too. So hopefully greater cannabis cultivation doesn't wreck that kind of sensitive ecosystem. Various other agriculture for that matter as well. Sugarcane, for example.
It seems like, unfortunately, like a lot of states, they're kind of squeezing the people and only allowing a certain number of people to actually cultivate and limiting licenses and things like that.
It's so bad. They don't understand that the economy thrives as a whole as you allow people to be involved, especially in a multi-billion industry when everybody's fucking broke right now. But it's not like the government really gives a shit about the people. That is not really their interest. Politicians are usually self-concerned, and it's really on us to put pressure and like hold people accountable collectively, I guess.
Well, and put it to them in a way that makes sense. Like Spartan Grown has done a few times a presentation basically saying how much money is created for the government, how much jobs are created for the cities, and how beneficial it is for the state to have a good legalization. Like I believe Michigan, I'm not going to say it's perfect, but they have a damn good set of laws up there for the most part. They've tried to strip away some of them recently with the caregivers, and I think they should keep fighting for their rights. But I mean, to be able to grow 12 for yourself and then 12 recreationally for like medical patient, that's 24. That's a pretty good count. And then if you become a caregiver, you can grow 72 plants plus your 12 rec, so 84. That's a pretty good count. I mean, 99 in California was a pretty big ass count, and people showed what you could really do with it.
Oh,
But they're doing it 100% legal up to 84 if you set it up properly, which I have mad respect for the people in Michigan and the people that push those laws, because I know it's not easy to get them in place, and they have to fight to keep them where they're at and continue to improve them.
Speaking of cool things we've been doing, I'll just jump in and say I just got done filming with a group called Saigo International, and they're up in Aguanga. And I'm excited because they're trying to use native flora and fauna for their IPM, and also for their to propagate the local ecology that they have that they're growing with, as well as hemp. And so kind of having a really sustainable, ecologically conscientious grow is pretty cool. And they're trying to document everything that they do too, so that people can learn from their triumphs and mistakes. And so I'm pretty excited to see how that will go.
I would imagine it's going to be a learning process, like anybody who's setting up a controlled environment on a more ecologically minded budget. I don't know if they're going to use like solar or other means, but it'll be cool to see what they come up with, and I look forward to seeing your work with them. I think you do a great job of collaborating with people outside of maybe our traditional community, and I think that's great for yourself and all of us, because as you are sort of interacting with us, people will maybe find this show through some of your other work, and I think that we all grow together.
Yeah, I like to think so.
So I'm happy to see you continuing to share your information on someone comes back around for the good. My connection's unstable. Uh-oh.
I see. I was wondering why we had some dead air. I knew Jack wouldn't do us like that.
Yeah, my connection must have dropped out on us for a little bit. Can you hear me now?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're good.
I guess I'll take a second to say cheers to some of the people in the chat, like Smiley's Garden, Dave's Not Here, Australian Grown, and Dirt Road Dude. Cheers, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Stu Moo, Magnum Opus, St. Bernard's Observation Booth, and Skilbo One, just a few of the 68 that are here. I always enjoy the chat. I even see some people like Spartan Grown in the chat. He always holds it down and keeps up with the conversation that's going on over there, as well as the conversation on the panel, which is definitely a lot more difficult to do, especially when the panel gets a little bit smaller. Like when there's only 6 of us, it makes it a little bit more difficult to look back and forth at the chat, but he still does a great job of doing both. So cheers to you, Spartan. What are you smoking on tonight?
So far, man, I haven't been smoking on anything. I've got some. What I'm doing here, people seeing me, I have a little project I did where I put a F1 Cuvée male in a tent with some autoflower. I had autoflower from Morningstar Seed Company called Tire Fire, and I test for him, and he had gotten hold of me, said that he's not going to continue that line with the Tire Fire, so to kind of scrap it. So I was like, screw it, I'm going to pollinate it then, and that's what I did. And so now I'm sitting here trying to take a countless billion seeds out of these. It's like I've maybe gone through 5 or 6 nugs, and I already have probably easily approaching probably 50 to 60 seeds in here.
You're going to have hundreds, if not a few thousand.
Yeah, I imagine so. But what my idea was that so Cuvée is kind of known for being a fast finisher outside, as far as it finishes quickly outside, and then obviously any auto is going to be faster than a photo, or generally speaking. So my thinking was that out of this progeny, I'm looking for a photo period. I'm not looking for auto. And so I'm going to be searching through these F1 seeds, and most of these are going to be photo. From what I hear with auto breeders, when you take a photo and you smash it into a auto, that most of the F1s are photos. That's kind of what I want, because I want to get just a fast finisher that would be a good outdoor strain for up here in Michigan.
I would imagine that's what's going to happen, but you never know. Maybe some of
Why
them will be
did he-
auto flowering.
why did he discontinue it, Spartan? Did he say?
So he said he had a lot of prodigy from that line that were mutated, had weird mutations and things like that.
Oh, okay.
My plant never had any issue. I mean, it was a beautiful plant, and that's why I was like, "Fuck this! I'm gonna smash it with this male I got."
It seems like that'd be an interesting combination if it has that tire fire, like maybe a burnt rubber and cuvee or cuvee. It's kind of like a chocolatey, like wine. There's a whole lot of different flavors going on with. I've never actually personally had it, but I've only heard people's experiences with it, and they've all been good. Subcool love that one. So rest in peace, Sub. Shout out to you. I know he was a big fan, and you got the cuvee F1. So right, that's the original
Yes.
cross or
Yep.
V1.
Pre-fire. Yeah, I got it. I got a hold of Sub early on. Well, it's not early on, I guess. It depends on. Anyhow, I got a hold of him and I was asking him opinions on strains, and then Cuvée came up. I had asked him just, what's your favorite flavor? What's your favorite high? And so I picked both. It was a Vortex for the high and Cuvée for flavor. And it was a fast finisher outdoor, and it was a good hasher. So it was like, man, I had to pick that up. So I've had it for the longest time, and I just got around to papping it last year.
Definitely, I think when he passed, it inspired a lot of people to pop some of his seeds for sure, to go through and see what they could find. He bred a lot of really good stuff. I know the American one. I'm growing some of your crosses that are from Subcool's male, which was a Cheesequake male crossed to your proprietary female. It's the Amy Aces, which I got 7 for 7 germinated, all popped. So most of them have actually sprouted up above the soil. I went with the rice hulls on top before they actually sprouted this time, which usually I wait until they sprout and then top it with the rice hulls. But I said, I think they'll be able to make it through. And sure enough, most of them have so far. So the Donnie Burger, I will say, didn't germinate as quickly or as vigorously as the Amy Aces. So there's a 0.1 for Tao already. So we'll see how many females we get.
Well, I forget who it was who posted it, but they were popping some of Russ Brandon's or Brandon Rust's. I always get, because his first IG was backwards, so I always call him Russ Brandon. But
that's what it says right now on his Zoom screen.
Okay, but in any case,
Yeah.
In any case, she popped the seeds, and there was already microlife on the shell and on the seed growing, and like people don't realize.
Miss Mercy.
Yeah, first off, fresh seeds are going to be much more vigorous and quick, as well as seeds that are grown in living soil that have those microbes added on from nature is just going to exponentially make it a better experience. And yeah, when I learned about rhizophagy and how the plant takes up the microbes and then puts them on the seeds and the seed coat and all that stuff, I pretty much, when I start my seeds now, I don't hydrogen peroxide them or anything, just straight, straight in water. Well, now I put them. Yeah, I've been working on everything. It's a constant flux, but I've been soaking them, doing the float tech, and then putting them in paper towels. I'm not letting the worms get out, and yeah, we'll just leave it there.
I remember the whole Wormgate issue, and not the good kind of worms. Pot worms, I think, is what we ended up believing it was, or thinking it was, but I could be wrong if I'm misremembering that. Correct me, but I'm glad that you're having better success with your germination now. A lot of people have success many different ways, but it's just, to me, that's the most exciting time of the grow. I love when a seed just freshly pops. I know there's a lot of other exciting times, like late in flower, when everything smells and looks beautiful, but
this would be probably a good time to go through people's different germination methods, because I know everybody probably does things a little bit differently. And I know that for new growers, especially, that's a question I always get, is like, what's the best way to start seeds? What are your guys' opinions?
I guess I'll start, and then we can go around the horn a little bit. But I kind of do a little bit of a pre-treatment to my seed. I'll usually at least do a 3% hydrogen peroxide soak, where I put like the cap of hydrogen peroxide on the table, fill it up. I'll drop the seeds in that. And then I have a solution of water and hydrogen peroxide mix that I soak the paper towel in. And I'll fold that up, put it into a plastic baggie, and then hang it so that the seeds are kind of like on the upper part of the bag, so that it has a room to sprout downwards with gravity. That's the only reason that I'm hanging it vertically, like in a cabinet. Try to keep it in a kind of dark and semi-warm place between like closer to like the 70s, maybe some people go up to like low 80s. but I find like anywhere from 60 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit works well for me. And I usually check at about 24 hours. If they've sprouted a tail, you can plant them then. I go directly into my medium, which is soil. At that point, I'll usually use easy swap pot, solo cup size, a solo cup, or a 3.5 by 3.5 inch pot. And then I just plant it. And a few days later, you got yourself a little plant sprouted up. And I guess the only other thing I'd say is if I don't get any sprouted at 24 hours, I'll check again at 48 or 72. Usually if I have like the energy at night to go through the process of actually planting them or not. Depends. It's usually not like if it sprouted at 48, then I'll plant it at 48. It's just whether it's convenient to get to it. It can sit in that moist paper towel for up to like 3 or 4 days and not have an issue in my experience. If they get a really long taproot, then I'll use tweezers to help plant it into the medium. So that way I don't damage the root and kind of gently set it in there. I'll take my pinky and poke a hole, plant it, and then just gently kind of fill in around it. So you're not kind of smashing the plant, and only bury it maybe a centimeter or 2 deep. But that's my method. It works for me, but I'm curious to hear what Spartan Grown does to pop a seed.
It can be quick and easy. I take the seed and I put it in the soil. And I'm good. I'm done.
Me too.
Sometimes
honestly.
sometimes if I'm feeling particularly bougie, I might take some aloe and take the inside of an aloe frond and squeeze that into some water and then soak some root riot cubes in that water and then put the seed in the root riot cube. But that's like if I had some, like if I'm popping Brandon's gear, which is coming up, I would do shit like that just because I want to make sure that fucking every one of them pops because I want to search through all the phenos. But generally, I'm just like, fuck it. I'm going to throw it in there, either in a root riot cube or right in the soil. And I just want it to fucking take off and not have to be, if I have to take 100 steps to make it pop, I don't want that fucking thing. You know what I mean? I just want it to be easy. And so the same thing when I grow new strains, everybody says, oh, the first time I grow it this way, or I grow it that way. No, I grow it the way I grow every fucking plant because I want to see what it's going to do in the environment and the way that I grow it. I can't,
especially if it's not super supported. Not to
it's like, how can you do that's what I don't understand is how can you do a pheno selection as a grower? I'm not talking about as a breeder, because a breeder you're looking for the seed as your product, not the actual flower. But for me as a grower, it's like I don't have the time to grow them 100 times. I'm going to grow it 1 time or 2 times to make my pheno selection, but it's going to be in the way that I grow it, not in some weird alternate way. I don't understand that logic.
I agree with that. The one thing I will say is I have gone with the planting directly into the soil method, and while it works for a good amount of the stuff, a few times I had testers that like were 0 for 5 or 0 for 10 where other stuff was sprouting, and maybe like you said, maybe it's a weaker seed or something was wrong with it, or maybe I did something wrong that I wasn't even aware of. Maybe it was too wet or too dry at one point or something like that. But
well, the only thing that you said in your process that I disagreed with is using the hydrogen peroxide, and I know that's something that a lot of people use, but I'm on the organic side. It's like, no, why would I kill all my microbes that are on that seed casing, like Tao was just talking about? I mean, I understand you're trying to.
Well, if some of those microbes aren't so great, that might be why. But
yeah,
at the same
I'll tell
time,
you exactly why. When I popped my Platinum Yeti from Humboldt Seed Organization, I was a tester for them. It was a unreleased tester. It's still not released, so I can't even buy it even if I wanted to. I should have probably taken cuts because it was actually good stuff. But there was I popped 5, and 4 out of 5 popped beautifully. One of them had what I thought was a beneficial, fungus on it, and it ended up killing it off while it was still in a seedling. And I was like, that they were regular seeds, so that could have been one more female that I would have been able to hunt through. And like you were talking about with the most pheno selections, I want to give them the best chance to pop. So like I'll scarify or scuff it if it's not going to pop, or I'll even use a seed cracker if it doesn't pop. And usually that'll actually get them to go if they didn't pop in that first 24, 48, or 72 hours. If you give them like a little bit of assistance, sometimes you can still get them to go. And I'll kind of fight. I'm like Tao, like I'll keep the mutants or whatever in some cases, or fight to keep it alive to see every single pheno, just to, at least see what the potential was there. Because sometimes the ones that start slow or runty end up growing out into being a crazy flavor or a super like big producer later in flower or something, they don't stay runty for their entire lifetime or whatever it is. But at the same time,
that being said, one time I did get the opportunity to coat a couple of seeds and seedlings actually that had been sprouted with some Beauveria bassiana, which I love to talk about. And that was kind of fun. And I didn't really notice always, I felt like there was more vigorous growth, but I didn't have a control to compare it to or anything like that. So totally anecdotal. But
You can
yeah,
do that with like the Bacillus subtilis trichoderma combination.
I watered in my soil with that, with your whatever the microbe plus. I used a little pump sprayer and preconditioned my soil that I was planting into with that, but I didn't put it on the seed because
Yeah.
I figure I'd rather kill off anything negative and keep it kind of more sterile while
That's
it's
it.
sprouting, and then plant it into something
Yeah.
that's beneficial.
The Bacillus subtilis trichoderma is a different consortium. There is Bacillus subtilis in the microbe plus, but it's different microbes. I usually do them separately and then I add them together. I have the best success where I take a non-bleached plain paper towel, or maybe it's bleach, but it doesn't have any chemicals. You know what I'm talking about? Just a regular white one, unscented paper towel. I use either RO or distilled water. And I'll, always wash my hands beforehand, or I put on gloves when I'm handling everything. But I just take clean water. I soak the paper towel. I wring it out pretty well so that it's not saturated. And I just put my seeds in the paper towel and put them in a bag in a dark, warm place, like a Ziploc bag. And I usually have really good success, even with older seeds. And then after about 4 or 5 days, I'll pop them out and then I'll just put them into my media. Like you were saying, I'll usually have like a cup. I'll stick my finger in there, put the little tap root in there, kind of, and then I'll take my Microbe Plus and I'll do a water with that right out of the gate with a little pump sprayer.
It's very similar to my setup there. Let's see, the American one, you've got your hand up over there.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a point that if I have old seeds or unknown seeds, it's not bad to give them a rinse off with hydrogen peroxide, because when they were doing the studies and investigating how that all works, it was difficult to scrub the seeds of the indigenous bacteria that were on the seed. And even after they tried cleaning it thoroughly, there was still some left over because they wanted to experiment with no microbes at all. And they almost couldn't get it to where there was no microbes at all. So, with old seeds and unknown seeds, you can rinse them off with some hydrogen peroxide, and the good ones will still be inside and alive, from what I understand.
Yeah, you can also have some that are, and I have that video about cannabis ecology on my channel where we talk about, endophytes and, epiphytes and things. So there's the ones that are on the inside, on the seed hull itself. And obviously there's going to be some that will interact with the roots when they come out of the seed when it germinates. But I agree with you. Like, you probably can't get rid of everything so easily. Maybe if you ran it through a bunch of systemic microbial sites, but
I just saw this guy who did a side-by-side. He was a breeder. I can't remember their name to credit them, but they sprouted 100 seeds, and the ones that they just didn't treat at all, they used regular clean water, distilled water, or tap water, whatever it was. Had like in the mid 70s, low 80% germ rate. And then the ones that they cleaned with the hydrogen peroxide had in the 90% germ rate. It was like high 90s, like 97, 98%. So ever since I'd seen that, I'd started trying it and had good success with it. And before I was doing that, I had a few times where I didn't have the greatest germination. So I do think it might offer some benefit for people if they are having issues. But if you're not, if it's working great, just planting directly in the medium, I would do that because it's less work, to be perfectly honest. And a lot of the times, like if a seed's gifted to you or if you're making it yourself, then you don't have to go through all those processes. One of the things for the older seeds I wanted to mention was, and I wish I knew the EC, Dr. MJ might be the person to talk to, but he's not here this week, but 50 to 150 parts per million of gibberellic acid, also known as GA3, for older seeds. Like I have some Thai seeds from the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s from one of my mentors, and they were never able to get them to pop, but they have tons of them. And I have a few different methods like the scarifying or cracking that can help older seeds pop, as well as using gibberellic acid as a potential way to give them that vigor to help them sprout. Because a lot of the time they might even get a taproot and they just don't go. But that GA3, Kyle Breeder did a pop with some seeds from the 90s as well. And he experimented with like 250, 500, 100, 50, and a whole bunch of different ranges. But he said 50 to 150 range was the best in ppm. I don't know what ppm scale he was on is the only problem.
Well, it's just like seeds born in the 90s to require a chemical stimulant to work effectively. And I can say that too. Maybe that's a little bit of a black joke.
No, it's
Dark
on the
humor.
nose. think-
No, I get
Yeah.
it. That's funny shit, dude.
I think it was funny. But what generation doesn't need a little bit of chemical stimulation, right?
Exactly, right. Ultimately.
Whether it's sugar or caffeine or some sort of drug. I think most of us prefer just cannabis and other things. But I know Tao often talks about the cannabis and coffee connection. You were talking about that you might have some chocolate seeds come in the mail soon. Hopefully they arrive safe and sound and are what they were labeled as and grow out amazingly. I'm curious, you've tried the chocolate before, Tao, or you just heard that it's chocolate?
Sorry, yeah, I never tried the chocolate before, but whenever I ask anyone anywhere about chocolate and and it has the chocolate tie in it, so that's pretty much what I'm basing my hopes for finding some chocolate flavor in the chocolate. And I also have it out there. If anybody has any chocolate flavor cannabis or seeds, let me know. And yeah.
You're definitely
I'm
gonna
not-
have to let us know if it tastes that way. That is one of those dubious flavors that I've never had myself, but I would be super excited to experience.
Yeah,
Even an aroma for that matter.
that's why I'm kind of infatuated. I did at one point have a sample that was chocolate. It was there. I was told it was chocolate tie. It was even like brown in color. This is a long ass time ago. And like I don't know if they just packed it in chocolate, which could be the case, or they doctored it somehow. But it definitely had a chocolate smell and a flavor of chocolate too when you smoked it. So I'm gonna pop. If I knock on wood, I don't have them in hand yet, but I won the auction. I paid, so knock on wood, they make it to me. And if I get a male or female, I'm just gonna make like billion seeds and I could go through them and I'll be able to search a lot more from my original. So that's my plan on that.
That's a good
How
strategy.
is
Also,
chocolate seeds?
I'll definitely say that's a good method. Kineos Genetics does a lot of F2ing of their stuff to hunt through things as well. And speaking of seeds, we were talking about how we're all going through our process of sprouting them. And Sour Diesel Tangy has their hand up, and I'm not sure if it was about sprouting their seeds or something else, but feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I got a question. What about pH? Everyone was talking about RO versus distilled. What about the pH of the water? Because I normally go with 6.0, soak them for 24 hours. Then I use that same water that they've been soaking in. I do the cheapest paper towels I can buy, and because usually they're the best for germinating seeds. I've used good paper towels, and the seed they pop a tail and it grows into all that great wicking of the paper towel, and then I get a chore just to get it out of there. But the cheapest paper towels I can find are usually the best ones I can use. And
that's
basically
true.
I put them up. Yeah, I put them up on top of my lights and my old rolling tray with that I just happen to have basically two of them. I don't know what convention hall they wound up getting stolen from or slid down a hill on, but they work perfect. I put them up on top of my lights, put one on top of the other, and it just seems like it's their happy place. I've tried heat mats. I've tried a bunch of different ways, but sitting up on top of my lights inside those two plates seems like the way to go. But I've always tried 6.0 for pH, and I don't know if that's good, bad. I read it. I think Nebula Hayes had something like that up there, and
I've had good success with
that's it.
5.5 to the 7 range of pH. From 5.5, 6.0, 6.5, 7.0 have had good success with all those pH
Okay.
ranges. But the thing that you're just talking about with the two rolling trays, my mentor taught me how to grow in cocoa. When he was explaining to me how he pops seeds, he takes two plates and puts them on top of each other basically and does the paper towel tech, but basically laying flat and having it on top of a little bit of a heat source like a T5 light or whatever your grow light is if it's not too hot to cook them. If it's just a little bit of a warmth, then it definitely can promote good germination. And
Warm and humid, but not oversaturated. If you're going to do any type of media, that's really what it comes down to is those plants still need to have that gas exchange because when they pop, if they're in an anaerobic condition, that taproot is going to immediately turn to mush. It's going to get eaten up by anaerobic bacteria and it's the end of your seedling.
that's why
So-
it's beneficial to have something like the Microbe Plus, which doesn't that have facultative anaerobes, which can kind of work back and forth and potentially save a
Yeah.
situation like that.
Yep. That is one of the main benefits as far as, stress benefits, is because it can kind of alleviate some of the situation when it comes to both overwatering and underwatering. And they do that because a lot of these bacteria, they create mucilagistic compounds. And if you have roots that are coated in a bacterial slime, that can help, protect them and keep them a little more moist in drier conditions.
Matthew, you mentioned that you like the idea of going directly into the soil. So is that your approach? And if so, do you have any other comments on germinating seeds or IPM perspectives that you might want to toss in regard to this conversation?
Yeah, I'd like to say that it might be a little bit ironic that, or maybe not expected, that I don't really, I'm very much like Spartan in this way. I try to keep it very simple. Try is maybe not even an appropriate word. Usually I plant it directly into the soil and see if it works or not, or I'll use like the very famous and common paper towel technique, kind of like how you described, Jack. And but as far as IPM is considered, this is probably not necessarily the best way to go about it. I do like that you use the peroxide as like a little bit of a sterilant or a cleaner, and I think that is totally valid to also go the other direction, or maybe do both, sterilize and then inoculate with various microbes, so you kind of ensure that happens. And
I see people do that with Herb Natural. I've seen them do that with even, what's the IPM agent?
It's a Dr. Zymes.
Dr. Zymes.
Where they wash them and then
does it.
What-
dip them with like mycorrhizal.
What's in that herb natural? Do you know offhand, Jack?
I don't actually, personally. It's
Does
like
anyone?
purple.
I've if I can remember correctly, it has
I
like
could
some
just
essential
Google it.
oil. It has some like
Yeah.
essential oils in it. Maybe some mineral oils.
Yeah. Honestly, I think that like being conscientious, especially when it comes to like some of these plants that are coming out, and you've heard me talk about it before, but like coming from like indigenous locations, or like wild or landrace populations. I'm just kind of, I just always get flashbacks, not that I was alive at the time, but to the chestnut blight, and how it only took about 7 trees coming from China to wipe out millions upon millions of chestnut trees in North America, because they had this fungus. And I wouldn't be surprised if hemp phytoplasmas and other viruses or other sorts of pathogens that we're not even aware of, and various ones that we are aware of, could be a problem. So you just got to be conscientious of that, I think.
So
It's
I wanted
important to know
to
your source.
shed light on the Herb Natural situation, what it is. It says in its organic soil microbe suspended with an OMRI certified humulite-derived humate carrier. And that's as much as I could find, because I think it's the type of product it's not like dangerous. So as far as what they're producing, like I think I'm not seeing any MSDS sheets. It's not like something you're getting from like a hydroponic nutrient company or something like that.
Yeah, I'm
So
looking
it's
at the
humic
website
acid?
right now.
It's probably fulvic acid, and
They do have a list.
I thought there was.
Bacillus subtilis,
I might be-
Bacillus laciformis, subtilis
Laciformis.
species Spizicensi. Yeah.
Wait.
Bacillus-
Say it again.
All right, there's Bacillus subtilis and the licheniformis one. Then there's a
Licheniformis.
specific subtilis species Spizienzia.
How do you spell it?
Spiziiizeni. Then there's Bacillus pumilus.
Bacillus plumilis.
No, pumilus.
Oh, it's the okay, yeah.
Then Megatherium
Keep going.
and Trichoderma Hazarium.
Hazarium.
Yeah.
Hazarium.
And
That's the trichoderma that I saw through my company, Bokashi Earthworks, just by
Okay.
itself. So Bacillus subtilis is one of the ones in there that has a really high enzyme production capability, and organic acid. Those are the secondary metabolites. They produce them in really high quantities. The hold on, I have actually, one second. I have my ingredients over here on my label. I have some of those in there.
All right. Well, while you're looking, let me just shout out St. Bernard's observation booth did a post, and the Bacillus subtilis is amazing in all of the capacity for unlocking nutrients. It does more than just nitrogen. It does phosphorus. It does a whole bunch, and it's also a quorum sensing bacteria. If you could check out his IG and find that post, it's really interesting.
Yeah, so the Bacillus I'd have to see how it's spelled out, because there's a bunch of them. Like the one that I have in front of me is Plantarium, and then Fermentarium, which are really common in like beer fermentation. But each Bacillus species kind of has different metabolites that they produce, and that's what they'll use them for. The Bacillus licheniformis, that is one of the species that I'm going to be using in a new product, because I'm creating I'm attempting to formulate a stronger consortium that has a little bit more, powerful enzymatic productions, like the Bacillus megatherium, the licheniformis, there's another one. Some of these names are hard for me to pronounce.
Now, Brandon, do you ever get your biology tested in your soil, like to see what's alive at the end of the crop or whatever in the middle? See what's still in there? I know you always adding, but
so I've sent my soil to have like microscopy work done to like Leighton Morrison, Kingdom Aquaponics.
right.
But he's like, dude, he was super excited when he got it, because he was like, this is some of the best soil biology I've ever seen. And I was like, I'm not doing much in the way of like soil food web stuff. I'm just inoculating with the Micro Plus and the nematodes.
I would wonder, like, I would think that that sort of a statement would be pretty context dependent too.
I bet you the Bokashi helps things too.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. For the Bokashi, it's like a carrier substrate for that same consortium. And what it does is it adds a carbon source, it adds extra mineral and nutrient. And it's, and it's like I said, it's a carrier. But I don't use Bokashi on scale, because it would be too expensive. We're talking about dollar for dollar, and your like overhead when you're talking about scale. So I do what I need to have balanced nutrition in soil, and I don't really do too much extra stuff, because financially it doesn't make sense as an owner.
Do you use worm castings in your mix?
Right, exactly.
No worm castings in your mix?
No. I have my base mix. I believe the light blend has castings in it, but I do not use compost anymore. I don't use worm castings. And the reason I don't is because it's not really necessary. We already have this soil that's already a modified mix. It's been built. And, all of this science when it comes to the soil food web, what it all comes down to is the building up of higher order animals, right? From the soil. And so when you're doing that from an agronomy standpoint, you're starting at a point where you don't have something that's, that doesn't have proper nutrition, doesn't have sufficient nutrition, and it's not balanced. But when we create these soils, it's different. So it's the way that it works is more almost like an incubator where you're taking an agar plate that's your substrate, and your substrate in this case is your soil, and you're cycling everything that's already in those soils really, really easily because you have maximum gas exchange, because your soil is very porous, because your soil stays moist, and then also your environment allows it where it's nice and moist and humid, right? That's why the VPD for these systems are really important, especially for biologicals, because at a little bit, warmer temperatures, if it's, it's going to help that biology cycle. And that's one of the things, the phosphorus, it actually cycles better at a little bit higher temperature. So if your soil temperature is a little warmer, and it stays moist without drying out, you'll get that better phosphorus cycling. But, when we're looking at a lot of the science from an agricultural standpoint, all of those things are important. Earthworms, compost, because you're adding organic matter, you're sustaining biology until you can get natural higher order plants where it can go from field conditions where grasses and weeds grow first. You remediate, you add, you build, and then things like higher, bushes and shrubs and then trees. And you can start building up that soil using that type of science where you're doing just natural farming practices, right? But for these soils that are already created, they're not actually soils because they don't have any natural weathered conditions. There's no silt, sand, or clay in them. And so although they function like biochemically the same, it's very similar to hydroponics and cocoa medium, right? Where you have everything that's kind of already available and then you're just keeping it in sufficient balance. So that way, when the soil's wet, that what's held in solution, to say if I was to squeeze that solution out, it would be an adequate amount, and that's always in balance, right? Let's say it's 1200 ppm that you're shooting for. We're doing the same exact thing in these living organic systems, the exact same thing that people are doing in hydro, except the way that we go about it is slightly different. We're using biology to cycle things, and then we're just collecting, and like for me, I'm just collecting the data and then adding what I need to keep, my soluble salts where they need to be.
So
I'm always reminded. Oh,
go ahead, Matthew.
Stories like that always remind me of the interesting ecological quirk that's observed in a lot of literature that I read, that plants oftentimes require symbionts in order to expand into new locations. And certainly, in some cases anyways, if they do expand into new sort of like terrestrial soils or substrates or whatever over time, they may even get to a point where they couldn't even be reintroduced to like where the where the ancestral population was. Examples with plants in volcanic ash, I think palm in particular is a good example. Once they get adapted to that, then cannot actually function with or without the symbionts in their sort of other ancestral soils. And so it's just kind of one of those things where like what a plant needs is super contextual, and your context will kind of, I feel like anyways, the context will dictate a lot of what you do as a cultivator. And like you say, we're kind of pushing a lot of the same buttons because a lot of the broad strokes are going to be the same physiologically, but it's that minutia, right, where the details become more obvious.
I will say, with like the bokashi, it seems like you're watering in a lot of the microbes and other things like that, where somebody like myself might top dress worm castings and then sprinkle a little half handful of bokashi per plant. So like one handful did 2 plants for myself, and the bokashi will last a pretty decent time. Then I'll water in over top of that maybe once with a micro plus, and then just go water only for a good stretch of time. And I think that microbial community, if you keep like a mulch layer that keeps it moist all the time, can maintain a pretty strong community and grow that way. But it's sort of like 2 different ways of going about doing the same thing, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's
and I'm not saying that you shouldn't use compost or you shouldn't use castings. I highly promote, using these things, especially in in your backyard to grow your own food and, use that land. You can use all those practices to like just crush it with your outdoors and your food gardens. For me, at scale, when I look at a test and it says that I need a little bit of potassium and I need maybe a little bit of iron, and that's it. I can't go find a compost or a worm castings that just has that exact ratio to where I'm not adding a bunch of other things that are going to throw things out of balance. In that aspect, what I see across the board, because I look at a lot of soil tests now, what I see across the board is people's magnesium is always way over their potassium levels, and that should be flip-flopped. That's one of the biggest things that I see.
Cannabis in particular, of course.
I have
Cannabis and
I have to
cannabis.
agree with you. Is like I'm constantly having to tell people, especially in flour, more potassium, less everything else, and it'll solve a lot of issues.
Yeah.
Gypsum's a good way of getting potassium, right? Isn't it potassium and a little bit of sulfur? Or am I tripping?
Oh, that's calcium.
Potassium sulfate.
Like langbonite would be a source.
Yeah, but here's the thing: you don't want to use langbonite for a potassium fulfillment, and this is why. Because potassium actually has a lot of magnesium in it, and what happens is if you add the
You mean the
langbonite,
Yeah, the langbonite has a lot of magnesium.
yeah. So if you add langbonite to try to fill a potassium requirement, typically what you're going to end up doing is you're going to push your magnesium higher. See, what I see in soil is that if you're low on calcium, magnesium will kind of also drop a little bit. But as soon as there's more calcium in that soil, it's opened up and then there's more magnesium available, but then it goes higher than potassium. And that's the problem that I always see. There's always an issue with the magnesium, potassium.
Yeah, I always add the gypsum with the langbonite because that satisfies my calcium for that added magnesium.
So,
and I also get a little bit of sulfur, which is going to help with help with metabolism of secondary metabolites.
That's true. So here's a good rule of thumb. If you want to add, just a single source mineral input for potassium sulfate, it's both water soluble, so you can water it in for even distribution. It comes in granular and it comes in powder. So if you wanted a granular, it would be a slow release potassium. So if you're doing like a water only soil, you could use that as a top dress at the beginning, and it's going to slowly release that potassium as you water it in, if it's the granular type. It's also CDFA certified. It's a mineral. It's a mined mineral. I think it comes out of Florida, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Dungeon Gangsta asked, say an 8-week strain, when do you add extra potassium in flour?
Well, here's the thing. You need to have potassium throughout the whole entire cycle. Your potassium so early, like very early veg, you can have a little bit less potassium than nitrogen, but almost throughout the whole cycle, your potassium is going to be your second highest as far as ppm. It's going to be calcium will have the highest parts per million in solution, and then potassium, and then nitrogen. You always want to have potassium be kind of high. You don't want to overdo it, obviously, but you want it higher than magnesium, and you want it higher than nitrogen, especially during transition into like after the second week of flower. You really want to start pushing it.
I like front end at like end of veg, beginning of flower. That's where I like to fucking upload it and then just let it ride after that. I don't really add much in flower.
So I worked with somebody did the same thing and they did pretty well. Just wanted to add.
So this is what I'm doing now. I'm front loading calcium, so I'm adding gypsum, or I'm using Calphos because I want I really want to try to push my phos up. And the only way you can do that is through organics, is through nutrient cycling. So what I'm doing is I'm pushing the calcium, which is raising the pH, and then I'm increasing the amount of Microbe Plus I use. And the reason I'm doing this is because when you water with that Microbe Plus, it brings your water down to a really low pH. And so what happens is, you guys know in science, if you have something that's really acidic and something that's a base and you combine those, they react. So essentially what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create a better reaction with all those organic acids, with all of the elements that are attached to those calcium colloids in the soil, all those cations. And so when I go in water with this, this low pH that has tons of organic acids like the lactic acid, the acetic acids, the different enzymes that they're producing, it causes a reaction in the soil. And I believe what's happening is it's going through a greater oxidation redox potential in that soil. And so a wider range of things become available, if that makes sense. So front load that calcium really hard in veg. And then what I do is I cut off the calcium. I get it up to about 6% in leaf tissue. And then right now what I'm attempting to do is to push my EC and push my ppms, because the plant can tolerate higher nutrient densities, nutritional densities in the soil, or parts per ppm or EC, if you front loaded that calcium. And so around moving into the second week of flower, I push potassium super hard. And the reason why I push it really hard is because I want to start blocking the uptake of the calcium, because the calcium is an antagonist of magnesium and the potassium. And I've already front loaded it, so I don't need it anymore. And if it hasn't used it up in the soil, I stop using it, try to let it use it up. I drop the ppms on that calcium, and then I push the ppms up on, I'm gonna be pushing the ppms on everything else, but especially that potassium.
I always appreciate your perspective on that kind of a thing. It's like that meme about how like physics is just applied mathematics and biology is just applied chemistry. And I kind of sometimes feel like you and I operate on like different scales that kind of directly interact with each other, sort of like the trophic scales, and and then also all the things that are important for that autotroph to feed all those heterotrophs.
You know, I haven't publicly gone out and made a bunch of claims about what this does. Like, I don't go, oh, look, this is going to do this. But I actually have people who are like from Bryant and from Jenny from New Age Labs. And we're looking at the data and looking at the inputs, what we're using, and we're seeing a absolute direct correlation to the ability to take soils that are very, very low in phosphorus and convert that into phosphate and cycle that nutrient extremely well. And the other thing that's really surprising is that it cycles manganese amazingly. And that is awesome, because what happens is manganese and iron. I've talked about iron and about the oxidation redox potential of iron, because iron's really finicky. Fe2 plus is the only plant available, or ferrous iron is the only plant available iron. But as soon as it has two available
Cations?
Cations. And so that means it's going to bond with two different anions. It's gonna create a bond, so it oxidizes and is reduced it's oxidized really easy into Fe3 plus as soon as you put it in water, or when you start watering in. And so you're not always going to be able to get it unless your pH is down, so it's when you have that extra manganese, they flip-flop the roles of the biomechanics, like what they actually do internally in the plant.
I have a question about the phosphorus, because I remember a while back, and we've talked about it a few times since, on the show, Spartan brought up studying. I think it might have even been done here in San Diego by the woman whose last name is Justice, I believe, at Outco. They did like a study, and she said if it was lacking in potassium, that really destroyed the yield. But if it was lacking in phosphorus, the yield didn't really suffer. And so Spartan mentioned a few times, if I remember correctly, that he didn't worry as much about pushing phosphorus in his soil mixes. It's there, but he's not trying to push it super high. And I'm curious, Brandon, what amounts do you feel that are necessary to achieve like good quality yield, whatever it is?
It's
Because you have a
low.
lot of the testing.
It's surprisingly low. Optimal is around 4.5 ppm, but I'm trying to push it up to around 5.7 and 6. And the reason is this. What I've seen thus far is that when I increase the plant available phosphate along with the calcium, I see an increase in the uptake of the majority of micronutrients. I see this particularly in varieties that stretch a lot, like my Death Breath. It's a taller plant, and I'm not sure what's happening, but I think what's happening is that these plants are requiring more energy. And again, I've said this before, adenine triphosphate, or ATP, is the energy exchange currency for all biological processes internally in these plants. And that is a 3-phosphate molecule. And so it takes phosphorus to fuel all the internal processes. And so what I'm seeing so far, and I don't have solid proof, but I'm going to experiment with other varieties as I keep collecting data. I think that varieties that stretch a little bit more, they have a higher phosphate requirement. And I think that's just due to having to translocate so much nutrient over, a wider space, if that makes sense. Because I have these plants that like the Z-Kittles or the Skittles, whatever. They fucking go everywhere. Like Gorilla Glue goes everywhere, So I'm going to grab my Gorilla Glue cut back to somebody that's been holding on to it for me. And we're going to be running that because it dumps really well for rosin. So it's a good commercial rosin producer. So I'll be running that. And that's another variety that I can test this theory on.
Certainly, it seems like a lot of plants these days have a good amount of stretch, or at least from what I've been finding in my seed popping experience. It seems like more now are stretchy than are like squatty. It seemed like back in the day, everybody was breeding with Afghans and wanted to get that fast flowering short indica plant, but it seems like we've gone a little bit in the other direction in the last, 10 or 15 years or so.
I keep thinking of this Abacus hemp cultivar that I see often, and it gets really, really violet in coloration, more so than the other ones that are on the same, regimen. And it's just towering. I can always tell where my beloved Abacus is because it's just towering over in this violet deep stem. And I like those traits. I think they're very visually appealing. I like sort of, and I don't mean like ruderol this subspecies or whatever, but I like plants that are ruderol. I like those that have that like really great, dandelion-esque tenacity that they just shoot up and grow really woody. And I think it's also what makes it such a great plant for many other uses.
You would like Haze or Blue Dream. I want to give a second to let Dr. MJ take a chance to introduce himself. He just jumped in. I believe he should be set up and able to hear me by now. Doc, how you doing?
How's it going, everyone? Yeah, I sound okay. I didn't have a chance to do a mic check.
Yes, we can hear you perfectly. I just wanted to let you jump in there because we were just in the middle of our conversation, but I see that you joined in. I'm glad that you better late than never, as I always say. So let people know where to find you.
Yes, I was just caught up testing a light, so I had to wrap that up. But I am happy to be able to join you guys. I'm Dr. MJ Coco from cocoforcannabis.com.
So I have a question, speaking of lights, because I've been watching a lot of your reviews, and the numbers are getting higher and higher and higher. And I'm actually perfectly happy with my light right now. It's running great. It's doing great things for me, and I will replace it eventually with a newer one. But my thoughts are, is it in like I'm looking at the light they're growing with, or one of them at least, the SP3000, to suggest to my brother is going to get set up. And although it's not in that like 2.4 plus range, which some of the other things are hitting now, it has such a uniform
Yeah,
PPF at the canopy that I'm just like, I don't
I definitely
need
think that.
better
Yep.
than that.
There's more to do to evaluate a light than just think about the photon efficiency. In fact, I think mostly what you're buying when you buy a light is a PAR map. And you want to think about the distribution of light across the canopy. And then you think about sort of how much electricity does it take to generate that PAR map. And that gets you to the efficiency calculation and sort of that. But I agree. I think there's sort of too much emphasis placed just on the photon efficiency. And probably more should be placed on thinking about the distribution of high density light, like you're thinking. The PAR map is really good in that SP3000 and a 2x4 tent for sure.
It's like extremely impressive. And I honestly, like, I'm not a big fan of Mars, but I don't want to divulge too much personal information. But the other person who'll be growing with it will be more accepting of it for a number of reasons that I won't get into now. I wanted to get to the question from Amadeus Amadeus P, because I'll always mess up your last name. I apologize. They say at Cheap Home Grow. What do the panel members think of fish bone meal as a cal phos load? I'm curious what they think, because personally I've always thought of fish products being particularly high in nitrogen. But Brandon, Spartan, anybody, what do you guys think about that one?
Go ahead, Spartan.
Fish bones shouldn't be too high in nitrogen because you're using just the bones. The thing you have to worry about is have a heavy metal testing anything out of the water, basically. So
Agreed.
mercury's a consideration. Just make sure that if they don't have heavy testing on their website, that maybe they have a phone number you could call them and try to get that information. But yeah, I'm totally for it. I'm worried about the heavy metal when it comes to ocean stuff.
That was one of the concerns as far as the bone meals go, was cadmium is a really bad offender for like animals that come out of a slaughterhouse. And then ocean products in themselves bring up a huge plethora of issues, because our oceans are fucking filthy. That's the bottom line. And so what happens is a lot of the things that come out of the ocean are bioaccumulators, like kelp. When you're talking about crab meal and things that are bottom feeders that are eating the leftovers, all the bits and pieces in the trash, and then
Lived for many
those,
years.
so not only that, but anything that comes from the ocean, it's also going to be high in sodium, and it's probably going to be high in chloride as well. So we tested the compost up off of the islands in Hawaii, and they have great compost. It looked like they had great compost, but when you go and test it, it's super high in sodium, and it's because they're on an island, so it makes sense. So it's like, when you take that into consideration, how much percentage can you mix into a soil mix? You have to take those types of things in consideration: how much sodium, how much chloride, how much bicarbonate. Those are the things that are going to be antagonistic and really fuck your soil up.
I have another question, ocean related. I haven't been going in the ocean as much since the whole Fukushima thing, the nuclear plant in Japan, when there was that big earthquake, and then the tsunami, like it
There's
affected a lot
another
of things.
recent earthquake in Japan too, by the way.
And I've heard that they never were able to shut that down, were they? Or is that incorrect?
The three-eyed fish are coming, Jack.
I'm not worried
There
about
they
three
have it.
eyes.
There's
I'm worried
definitely
about
radiation leaks from Fukushima. Whether there's a concentration of it that you need to be worried about here on the west coast of the United States is a different question. But yeah,
I haven't looked into it. I should probably just Google it, but I also am a little bit of a skeptic. So whatever I read, I'd be like, oh, that's bullshit. I'm fucking gonna get, nuclear.
But anything can
Rent a
be
Geiger counter.
anything can be bioremediated, man. I'm telling you, there are some crazy microorganisms on this planet, and anything that's hydrocarbon based can basically be broken down and consumed and converted.
Well,
here's
these are
the-
radioactive isotopes that they're sending off sort of energy that will just kill life. It is, I think, a problem in the local area still for sure. And they weren't ever able to sort of fully clean it up, and they're just sort of dealing with the consequences of it. But I don't think it presents a real serious risk for us on the west coast of the United States.
My
like,
buddy
I-
Matsunega, he goes to work, I think, in the north to Tokyo, and when he has his international business partners come in, I think he always makes sure that they do interact, like in the north part, or anywhere north of Tokyo. He says, and I think he said it was because of Fukushima, but I'm not sure if that's even geographically accurate,
It is north of Tokyo.
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So then that doesn't make any sense.
Well, my
Anywho.
thought is, I used to be a lobster diver. I had a partner and I who used to go out. We were buddies, and you have to catch them by hand here in California. You can't spear them. You can't use like it's called a
cage.
tickle stick. They have like nets that you can like hoop catch if you're using like a boat or a kayak or whatever.
Yeah.
But I would dive down and grab them with my hands, and then you throw them into a bag. And it's actually really good eating. They're not like a Maine lobster. They don't have the big claws.
No,
but-
let me ask you this. If you won't feed it to your plants, you're going to feed it to your body? I mean, like, that's my whole thing with shrimp and lobster, the bottom feeders of the ocean. You guys say it's bad for your plants. You're going to put it directly in your belly? Come on.
That was
now.
my thought,
No, I'm
honestly.
only
Like,
messing.
it's like
Yeah,
they
I don't
live
know
for
about
that.
they say
But
lobsters
they're not
would
the
live
same
indefinitely.
thing.
They would live indefinitely if they didn't get killed by a predator. So some of these like lobsters and crabs, they have extremely long lifespan. So not only like is Fukushima, but all the other shit that's been dumped in the ocean, fuels and other waste. They're
Yeah, we're worried
accumulating
about the
things that-
runoff from our own pollution with our shellfish here. Absolutely, I agree with that. I think
like
we're kind of off topic.
We are, definitely.
It's all related.
It is kind of related though,
It's a
because
big one.
if we're talking about, inputs, but then again, hey, home grow can also be not just cannabis, but home grow can also be growing your own food. And
True.
we
Pertaining
don't
to
have
what
to
you eat,
worry
for
if
sure.
if you grow your own food, then you don't have to worry about like questioning what's in it.
Well, and I used to think that about
Um,
hunting too, but in this case, like fishing, you do actually have to in some regard. But one thing I wanted to get to, a question, I can't remember who it was from in the DMs. I sent them a link to our episode where we talked about amendments because I was like, hey, we already kind of did an episode about that. But they're like, what do you think about minerals? What minerals would you use in a soil mix? Because they always hear us talking about amendments. So I like sent them the amendment episode, which I think is like episode 40 something. But it's out there. You can Google Growing with the Fellow Growers amendments. It's in the title. So you can search that one out. But for the person who asked that question, I'm curious, what do you guys think about using minerals as part of your soil mix, and which ones would you use?
You want me to do this one? Because I do all the mineral mixes. I just had a mix made at a soil yard the other day.
I'd love to hear that.
Okay, so when building soil, the first thing you want to probably use is like a peat base, if that's your thing. I like to use peat. I use peat. I use like a compost, castings, rice hulls, and pumice. And so for me, what I'll do and what I'm doing right now is I have my sample, I have my base mix. It was like 3% gypsum. I think it was like 7% castings. I think it was like maybe 15 or 20% compost. Then I had 10% rice hulls, 30% pumice, and 30% peat. I think that was the recipe. My bag's in the other room. I don't know if that was the right ratio, if that equaled 100 or not, but
It's close.
it was close, right? Okay, so good. So I had that mixed at a large soil yard here out in the Midwest where I'm at, and they do a lot of bag soils for just huge companies all over the United States. I was like, fuck yeah, this is the place. So they can mix me up anything. And so this is the base that I started with. What I'll do is I'll have that base tested at Logan Labs, and then I'll add, these are the mineral mixes that I'll add to get everything on point. Okay, so for pH, I'll add wollastonite, And what that is that's calcium silica. It goes under the name Vansil. And that is great because it's going to add calcium and silica. And it is a slow release kind of, and it gives a really good soil buffering pH. I'll use gypsum. Gypsum will fulfill calcium and pH requirements higher, but because it has sulfur in it too, as the calcium is used, the pH will drop. So you have to be mindful of that. I'll use Calphos. Calphos is calcium phosphate. It's calcium and phosphorus in mineral form. It's a rock mineral. And I'll use that for calcium and phosphorus. Next minerals that I like to use are going to be all of the mineral sulfate. So all the mined rock mineral that are both great because they're water soluble and they don't particularly need a whole lot of it, but they are potassium sulfate, iron sulfate, zinc sulfate, copper sulfate, magnesium sulfate, solubor or borax, and typically I don't use any type of manganese or molybdenum because I have the microbes and it cycles those so easily. So those are all the things. Those are pretty much the whole list of things that you would typically use at scale to balance and keep things in balance.
That person's going to be very happy with that answer, I'm sure. I want to give it over to anybody else on the panel who would like to answer before I say, how dare you look over molybdenum? I just joke because I think Aquaponics Steve, or I can't remember what his name is, but he runs Potentponics Steve. I never remember his actual...
Steve Reisner.
Steve Reisner. All right. He's a badass dude, and he talks a little bit about the role of molybdenum. And I think it has to do something with plants turning purple. So
I don't know,
check out
but
his show.
I'll add that I add azomite, and I don't know. I know there's some metal in there, but yeah, azomite has everything in it.
So that's the whole
Russ
thing,
is
though.
saying no good. All
No,
right,
so
I'll listen.
that's just the thing about like these rock minerals. They're typically high in heavy metals, particularly they're high in aluminum. They're typically high in...
You can get them tested though. I've seen them with testing.
I mean, you can get some tested. Don't get me wrong, but here's the thing, though, right?
And they do need a little bit of metal. It's like nickel is necessary, right?
I mean, there's other things like cadmium, selenium, cobalt, but the actual amount that you need is, I don't
It's
even
so
know
trivial.
if it's measured.
Okay.
I don't know if it's like really measurable. And on most
Okay.
tests, they don't even add it because it's so small. And like I was told by a couple people that I've talked with, if you see selenium on a test, it just means that your plants aren't going through any type of stress. And if that happens, or if they do go through stress, they'll be kind of buffered for it. But they're not. That's the only information I even have on that element. I don't see it.
Right. Let me
I
ask
just
you guys
don't
this. So
see
iron is a
information on
metal.
it.
What's the difference between a metal and a heavy metal? And why is heavy metals bad for us anyway? And does it really get in the smoke when we inhale it?
Yes, it does, Tal. We've talked about
okay.
this. We talked
Yeah,
about it with
no,
Smiley, and
I asked
Smiley's
it
like,
before.
doesn't it need a certain level of heavy metals? And no, it does not need heavy metals. They're dangerous for human consumption, especially if you're cultivating a plant like cannabis, which is a bioaccumulator. And on top of that, it shows up in the tests, whether you're making concentrate or flour. When you concentrate it, it skyrockets the levels. So even trace amounts of it is horrible to have in your inputs. So I'm agreeing with Brandon. If you're going to use an input like a rock dust, look for heavy metal testing.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, it'll be very, very low. Trace amounts, I think, it's not the worst thing in the whole world, but if you don't have to put it in there, why put it in there if it does have heavy metals? I would avoid it if it has heavy
They're
metals.
problematic because-
iron and zinc. And what's the difference between heavy metal and regular metals?
I think Dr.
Yeah,
MJ Coco explained it really elegantly the last time, but if I remember correctly, and the way I understand is that they bind with things that should be binding with other things, and so that's really poisonous to you, right?
Sorry, yeah. I think I was actually thinking about if there's what the technical definition I was trying to answer Tao's question, what is the difference between heavy metals and metal per se? It may be actually molecular weight. So I was
It
just
is. It's exactly that. That's why when they Spartan Grown, when they had the heavy metal issue, not to call out Mid-Canico, but many places fail for heavy metals in Michigan, and one of the things they can do is remediate it or have it retested again. And if they retest it again, it fails, it gets destroyed. So they can make it into concentrate. And what they use is a centrifuge. They spin it, and the metals are literally heavier than the concentrate. So that drops to the bottom, and they can basically take the top off, which is the clean concentrate. And then they test it over and over again until there's absolutely no heavy metals in there, and you can have a clean product that can go to market. So that does happen, and they're literally actually a heavier molecular weight. So that is one thing that separates them. There are a few other things that make them, I think, dangerous for humans. But sorry, Doc, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just think that that's right. So the technical answer is it's a molecular weight. And Smart Poker asks in the chat if it relates to the periodic table, and I believe that it does. I'm not entirely sure what the cutoff is, so we can keep looking for that.
Oh
Isn't
yeah.
it like after lead? No, I'm thinking.
Here, I have
Like how there's 8
periodic
noble
table right here.
gases.
Here, what do you
But what's the cutoff point that differentiates? Like, what's the weight
It's
that makes it
labeled
heavy?
heavy metal. Yeah.
I think anything after mercury, right?
I think that's a different metric. I just looked it up on Wikipedia, right?
Yeah. There you go. What's Wikipedia say, Matthew?
It says that the World Health Organization's list of 10 chemicals of major public concern would include cadmium, mercury, lead, maybe some.
Yeah, I've always thought that
manganese,
mercury
chromium.
was considered. I was just wondering if that was a cultural definition, that this is
I
they're
think
heavy metals
so.
because they're dangerous ones, or if they're actually heavy metals because they're classified together on the periodic table. This is sort of a chemist's question more than.
Yeah, I'm not a big. I mean, it's much. Yeah, this is the thing. This is why I like Brandon and other people's perspectives. The chemistry stuff. I'm not as good with the maths.
Hey, all the home growers, if you guys go to like Staples, they have a section in the print section, and they literally have these little, they're like quick study academic guides, and there's all kinds of them. We got like the periodic table. I got one on anatomy. I got first aid. I got the muscular system. I got weights
Can I
and
please read
measures, public speaking, social media marketing, chemistry. Here's the chemistry. This is the one that we need right here, right? And biology.
I got to read you guys what Google returned when I asked it what the difference between heavy metal versus metal was.
What did it say?
It says, in the shortest possible terms, metal is a genre of music, and heavy metal is a specific subgenre of metal, just like thrash metal or death metal. It makes no sense to call forms of metal heavy metal. Does that answer your question, Tom?
I guess
Yes,
heavy
it
metal's dangerous.
Yeah,
play
exactly.
acid.
All around, it's just
Gone.
dangerous.
Don't
They've been
play
saying
acid.
it for years. Maybe they were right all along.
So yeah, right. Rock is also problematic, right? Very heavy.
Yeah, rock is also. You want me to read what
hard
they say
rock.
about that?
Hard
Hard
rock.
Speaking of that, Sour Diesel
Seeds
Tangy,
microbes.
you play some pretty heavy music in your garden sometimes, and I know you were talking about giving a garden tour tonight. I don't know what time you want to do that at. We're coming up to about 5:30. Spartan usually gets going about 5:45, so I just wanted to check in with you and see how things are going over there.
Oh, I've been watering, trimming, hanging traps, listening. Once you guys started talking the periodic table, I'm like, yeah, good time to water. Sorry, guys.
That's
Hey, what
and
is Sour Diesel Tangy? I didn't know you were on.
cooking
Oh,
is just
sorry, man.
cooking is just chemistry for hungry people, after all, right?
Yeah,
Baking
but hey,
seems like
whenever you guys want, we can try to give it a go whenever you want, Jack.
Yeah, let's see it right
Hey,
now.
We should
no better
spotlight
time
our
than the
guest.
present. I'll
Okay,
spotlight it
so
right
if
now.
I go, you want me to go share content, right?
Yeah,
you
we can
just
do
turn your
that. I'm
camera
gonna.
on, right?
Yeah, just turn the camera on. You could.
All right,
Or you're gonna
let's see what
share
you
a
guys
video.
get. No, I'll share content. I just want to make sure I'm rear facing versus front facing. And what do you guys see?
Plants.
We see plants. I'm gonna
Yeah,
spotlight you
yeah.
now. Spotlight you for everyone.
All right, so let's start at the beginning. Get my chair out of the way, which is better known as a step ladder. So here's you guys checking out the iPad. I always watch the show in here at night, Sunday nights. Basically, we got a little boy or a small boy or whatever it is,
Yeah.
hydrologic, just enough to get out some of the nastiness. We got 2 controllers. one controller controlling 3 lights.
Make sure you
You
got
got-
the tape on your controller so that light don't harm out your plants.
I do. This one goes to sleep, but not quite asleep enough for me.
Yeah,
So
we had
I'm pretty much.
it's we had to do the same thing in our greenhouses where we had these big controllers that had these numbers, and when we first had them installed, we weren't even paying attention to it, and we had some plants in front of it. Herman were like, "Fuck, man, those things must be
Were they
so
green
bright."
lights too? Were they green?
I think they were blue.
Yeah, because I mean these are
They were
green
like
here, and I still don't trust them.
Yeah, I don't either.
But basically, we got the good old fashioned spa filter here. We got the star mixer, so we can go into mix mode. And then we just switch over to feed, but it makes it so much easier to mix. You can mix it, draw the water right into here. Super easy. Big fan of that. But best $17 I ever spent. Everything else cost a lot more. But
You're keeping that water pretty cold.
nah, water's about 77 now. It comes out, we're in the 50s. It's getting a little warmer now, but for the most part, it's pretty cold coming in, and I keep it below. It's always below, say, 78. But for the most part, once the summer comes, I may have to rethink that location because it does
Pretty
get a
warm,
little
yeah, for water.
does get a little warm in there. Yeah,
You-
I try to
you-
keep it in the 70s, but
You know what I
Start
used to
getting
do?
the 60s.
I go for
I used to-
68.
Yeah, I used to go and get I used to fill up 2-liter soda bottles and
And
with
freeze 'em.
water
Freeze
and
'em,
freeze
yeah.
them, and I'd have like 2 or 3 of them in my freezer, and every day I'd throw one in there.
Yeah, I've done that too. Keeping it cooler
So
will
what do you-
keep it cleaner. I mean, it just really helps.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you'll
it's more
also
oxygen.
increase the oxygen will
I'm running an Airstone in there now. I'm running New Millennium, and for the most part, I'm cleaning out every 4 tanks. I just flush everything out, clean the tank out, take it upstairs, clean everything I can, and it seems to be okay. But I know I'm running a little hot. I'm gonna try that.
Yeah,
What do you guys
the
recommend
issue-
for a temperature.
So, Sour Diesel, the issue with the warm water is more than just the tank cleanouts. It's the amount of dissolved oxygen that can hang out in that water. Once you get sort of above 70 Fahrenheit, and especially as you get higher than that, you really start to reduce the amount of dissolved oxygen that can be held at suspension in the water. So that's one of the main reasons that running it a little bit cooler is good for keeping down bad bacteria, but also for helping the plants.
So
I
what would
just
you
wanna-
recommend? 68?
Those
68.
plants,
68 is what I
Yeah,
shoot for
68 is the
personally.
sweet spot. You don't want to get cooler than that because it will shock the roots if it's too cooler compared to the ambient air temperature. So it's sort of a sweet spot where being cooler will actually help you dissolve more oxygen. But if you're too cold, you'll just shock the roots.
They look good though, man.
the
Your
plants
Angie, what are
look
you like,
happy.
week
Yeah, that's what
3,
I was
week?
about to say. They look real happy. Whatever the
Under
temperatures are.
not week 3. We're
Yeah,
day
you're-
7, 14, 15. Day 15.
Your garden looks beautiful. I don't mean to give you any kind of criticism in that regard.
No,
the plants look gorgeous. What
Dude, if it
lights are
wasn't-
you running? What are those? I'm trying to figure that out. Are those California
These
Lightworks?
are
Oh, FGIs.
these are yeah, me and Kevin. Kevin was on the show a while back. Probably
Yep.
a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years now.
I've had a
and,
few
um,
conversations with him. He's a good guy.
I was running Kevin's bar lights, and I drew. Yeah, he's a good guy. He speaks real highly of you. He's really real big fan of everything you're doing over there. But
Thank you.
I sent him a drawing of something I wanted to do. I wanted to carve up one of my Uniformity Pros and stuff one of these 500s in there because I'm kind of a fanboy of the L500 because that was my first real light. I got into a conversation with Kevin one night, and I didn't realize he was the owner. Had a little bit to smoke and maybe had a few glasses of wine, a couple beers probably, and I just said, "Hey man, I really need a great light, but there's one problem, and that's I can't pay you for it." And he basically he sent me like a demo light. I gave him a credit card number. He charged me like half the money that it was worth, and sent me a demo light. And from there, we just had a great relationship. So when I sent him a drawing saying, "Kevin, I think this would be a cool idea. How can we incorporate it?" he says, I just revamped the 500. He says, I know you're a fanboy of it. He says, why don't you take 3 of them and run it under max conditions? You pay for the CO2 and cover shipping or whatever else I hit you up for, and go with that. And I was like, I'll do whatever you want. I heard 3 of these lights I'm a real big
Sal.
fan of.
Nice,
what's
nice. And it looks like you got some UV
What are those
tubes in
LED?
there, right?
Yeah, UV. Those straight bars or LED? I mean UV lights.
Oh no, those are
Yep.
UV LEDs.
UV LED and then
That's-
far red on the other one.
Right. These are UVAs. So I got UVA,
Are those also FGIs?
UVA. Yep, these are FGI also. This
Okay.
is the far red right here. I don't know if you can see the labels, but that's the
Dude,
UVA.
It's interesting. I didn't realize he was
That's
doing his
perfect
UVs
setup.
with LEDs.
That's the
I
I love
like-
that white
Well, it
white
looks
plus blue and red.
cool, and I don't know, but I'm hoping that I don't get too much stretch, because I mean the Rocksteady from Irie Genetics, this thing's going off the rails on day 15. I've had to raise the lights 3 times. So,
What's your
we're
par
already
meter?
past where I was supposed to put on the second trellis.
I see you have a
Dude.
par meter right there. Where's the
Par?
par meter
What-
reading at?
The stuff I gave you, when
All right,
you
stand
start
by.
growing that, it's not going to stretch very much. That stuff stays super stocky.
Hey man, you make the call there, Brandon. We're gonna run whatever you tell me to run. You own the
No.
room.
No,
For
you,
the next
you
run.
do what you want.
So we're pulling
Garden.
12 beans here, 13 beans, pulling 13
dude,
here.
you got
We get under here, we're
all the
like
bells and
2 grand, I
whistles.
think.
That's awesome.
Go right around here.
What's your CO2 level?
Yeah, it's been a CO2. I'm only at 1150 right now. I did some
Wait,
reading
what
on
was the
CO2.
PPFD
and it
readings?
seems-
I missed that.
Oh, my PPFD on this one here in the middle is way too high. It's like 2000.
Almost.
It's 2000. Yeah, you're up too close to it. So you're gonna super
Wait,
crop
so
away
I-
from it, or are you gonna raise it, or?
I'm gonna
Why don't-
raise it until I run out of room. Once
Why
I
don't
run
you
out
just
of room,
pinch it and bend it?
Yeah,
bend
exactly.
that top, pinch it and bend
Well-
it. It'll recover real quick. Your plants are healthy.
Super cropping. Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
yeah, I got the 3rd trellis ready to go. See, and I
Okay.
already missed my 2nd trellis.
Yeah.
So
If
I
you
like
got
to- I-
room, then
I
It
got a
looks like
little
that
bit of
light's-
room. I got about another foot,
That's
Okay.
not a
but
lot.
I figure
it
I'm
looks
gonna.
like.
I'm
It'll even
I
it out
know.
though. Like if you watch Dr. MJ's tests, when he tests those lights, when you move it up even just a few extra inches, it evens out the
big
intensity
time.
across the canopy.
Exactly.
And-
And you lose a little bit of the
inch.
power, which is actually a good thing for him in that case.
Yeah, even an inch made a huge difference. These were these were like 2000. I raised them up like 2 inches, and they came down to 13 or 1400. And then the spread was still pretty decent. But if you look over here, we lose a bit over here in the corner.
Yeah, you don't have good reflection up against the edges.
Yeah, look,
That
we're
would be
only
one
pulling
thing
like
to get those
400.
PPFD readings up.
The other thing I was gonna say is Doc.
I mean, I was gonna tip it too, and then that brings it way up too. But at the end of the
Doc,
day, it
Which
doesn't
meter
look
is that? Is
bad.
that a 200 or
drawing-
500?
That is the cheap one you can get. So I think it's a 200. The 500 has spectrum,
Okay.
right?
So you're not going to get,
This one's
you're not
just
going to
par.
measure the
So-
reflected light with the 200. You're not going to measure it as accurately, or you're not going to measure as much of it. So against the edges where you would be counting more on reflected light, the 200 is going to lead to a little bit of an under reading, which
Yeah.
is good news.
What
because
about,
that means
um,
you actually have a little bit more light there than you may think you do. But
Yeah.
it does look like the reflection around the edges, you're probably leading to some overspill losses there.
The one thing I was going to
Yeah.
say is, Doc, you mentioned a while back the study that mentioned if you get your CO2 up to as little as just 800 ppm, that your plants can run at about 1500 ppfd if all the other conditions are kept optimal. And somebody like Tangi, who's got a Quest dehumidifier at the end of the room with a nice, I'm not sure what brand it is, but I've seen that humidifier directly underneath it. So I'd imagine his
Yeah.
temperature and everything is fairly close to
Yeah.
ideal.
It looks like he's got AC. It's a sealed space, I imagine, and with supplemental CO2.
Yep.
He can 2000 is still too high though. So we're
No, I
talking
totally
about,
agree. I totally agree at that point. It's 2000
we're
is
talking
too
about
high.
a 1500 limit in that case. And if he's, the best rule is to be at about 1-to-1 if you are up there. So a higher concentration, you can get away. The Chandra study showed that you can get away with 800 and CO2, 800 ppm of CO2 and 1500 ppfd. But if you're running above 1,000 in terms of ppfd, we recommend you be sort of 1-to-1 with your CO2 ppm. So if you're at 1,500,
Really? So
closer to that, I mean, you don't have to be quite there, especially at 1,500. 1,500 ppfd, maybe 1,200 ppms of CO2 is optimal.
Do some jumping jacks in there. Come on, Sour Diesel Tangy. I got 1,300 and 1,900 in here. I'm not supplementing shit. I just got 2 cats, me and my
So
wife.
that's your CO2?
Yeah,
there we
1,300
go.
and 1,900
Yeah.
is my CO2. His is 1,165. right now.
1165. I think 1165 is
He
fine.
has all the
for
hungry
up to
plants, though.
1,500
Yeah, you're
ppfd.
good, dude.
Yeah. Been creeping
Yeah,
them
sucking
up.
it up.
Been creeping up 50 a week. So I'm going up 50 a week. Seeing it Sunday. We should have been up 50. We should have been at 1,200 as of tonight anyway. So yeah.
Yeah,
So
you're
next
not
week
gonna
I'll be
get-
at like 1,250 on.
Looks
There's
like
no
you're
real
gonna
need,
crush,
Sour.
dude.
I have
There's
a
no real need to
question.
go higher than
15
that, I don't
looks
think.
good.
You
That
know,
Don't
is
need
third
to
it,
go
Sprague
higher than
layer will
1250.
help a lot too.
No,
Isn't it a
you're
good
maxing
idea
out,
to-
man. You're maxing out at about 1,500 ppfd, and you're going to max out, 1,200, 1,300 CO2. ppms of CO2 is going to be more than enough to support that 1,500 ppms of ppfd. I think the one issue that I think you'd want to address now would be to get that one cola probably down out of the 2,000s. But other than that, I think you're cruising, man. I think you got a really nice setup, and that's going to produce a lot of flower if you keep those variables sort of locked in where we're talking about with those lights and that climate control and that carbon dioxide supplementation.
Yeah, I like the flexibility of having the 3 lights. I
Yeah,
really
what's the
enjoy
heat
having
output though?
lights.
How much do you have to sub? That's one of the big things I've been talking to the engineers at Photon Tech about with their CO2 light was the heat output, because running in a sealed space with LEDs putting out that heat and you have to use your air conditioner, well, the heat gun is not going to.
I'm looking
Yeah.
at leaf temperature because I kicked my heat up a little bit after talking to Sequence. Sequence kind of gave me a little bit of education on
Yep.
I can run my temps up a little bit so I
Yep.
can get those leaf temperatures up a little bit so I can transpire, and everything else seems to be
Yeah, you can
Working
absolutely you can be up
pretty
in the
well.
higher 80s.
Especially with the CO2.
Yes. But I'm just
Yeah,
talking
'cause I'm
about
at
how much do
82.5
you
right
know
now.
what your BTU load is? Do you know how much you're having to cool on like a daily basis? Because of the heat that
Right
I
now,
imagine
nothing.
you're having to cool something from the heat the lights are dumping in that
Mm.
space.
Not right now, no. We were 64, 65 degrees today, and the
Okay.
AC didn't kick on at all. So
And you're not venting.
once we get up in the 70s, I feel no, I'm taking in cool air right here from the basement, and that's just pushing in. Then we take our filtered air from the room that
Right.
goes into here, which is my wife's room,
Okay.
which is also a sealed room, no exhaust there. And then from there we come into here from a Venturi. Basically, I go a 6-inch down to 4-inch, so I have faster air coming in here.
So that's a
into
sealed
here.
lung room?
Yeah. Her
Okay.
room doesn't have. I mean, it probably leaks a little bit. I don't have it sealed as well.
But
as
your
this room was.
idea is to keep the CO2?
My idea is to try to hold on to as much CO2, and I'm
Okay.
not pulling through it the way I was.
Yeah.
Like
Okay. I
a tank
understand
is
that
a
then.
tank 7 to 10 days on a tank. So
How is
that's what
your,
I was
um,
doing.
How is your sensor for CO2 set up?
Right now, just in the room,
Good
right
question.
over here.
You should lower
You
it,
can see
maybe.
it. I can put it
Right?
right
Shouldn't
in the
it be
canopy.
near
I
the
was gonna
canopy
put.
space?
I can put it in the canopy, but at the end of the day, if I'm that high there and I'm blowing in from here, I'm pretty sure that I'm drawing there. That's where my draft is. That's drawing
Yeah.
air through that. So I figure I'm pulling CO2 across the canopy, because normally on my second trellis, which is, as you can see right here.
Your
if you
plants
don't
have more than your
know-
meter
if you-
reads, for sure.
You need
I would
some
imagine
circulation
they
in
do.
there,
That's
so
all,
it's going to
yeah.
be all blown around and mixed up pretty good, pretty quickly.
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
usually have the T, and this is the perforated hose, and this sits on my second trellis, which, as you can see, I didn't do yet. And now I'm already up to my third trellis, which we're gonna turn out to be my second trellis. But I'll drape that over the trellis, and then my CO2 will be getting blown around, but it'll actually be showering down And then from here, I don't know if you can see it, but I have another fan over there that tends to push against the grain back this way, so that hopefully when it hits up here again, it gets flushed around. So I can kind of flush the air back and forth through the canopy, up, down, wherever. And then eventually the exhaust, whatever gets into there. Her room's pulling, let's see, what was it say on the meter? I think her room said I was at like 600 or 700 in her room all the time. It never changes. So I am losing something when I get out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
not
and
losing
hopefully
as much
also
as
the
I
plants are helping you out with some of it too. So you're going to lose some carbon dioxide. That's cool,
Yeah,
man. I'm excited to see how many cycles. Is this your first grow through with it all set up like that?
Yeah, first run with this setup. So
It looks great, man. Everything's on point. You got all the meters and stuff. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
yeah, it was it's been a lot of work and a lot of reinvestment as far as we've had to put a lot of time and the lights. I really got lucky. Kevin Sullivan really hooked me up from Forever Green Indoors. You know, he just wants to see the results. He wants to hear, because this is basically his ideal setup. So he wants to see what it pulls. He wants me to take good notes. I probably talked to him a half dozen times since he sent over the lights, but he's excited, and he's always been a big advocate. You know, he's really helped me try to succeed, and I can't say enough nice things about, you know, between Cheap Home Grow and Kevin Sullivan over at FGI. I mean, I wouldn't be anywhere. I'd still be running under blurples in the corner of my garage next to my oil tank. So you guys have
happy
all
to
been
see.
great, you know.
We're honestly really happy to see
Yeah,
it.
it's
I'm
been a
curious.
blast, man.
You talked about the lights up top as that's part of the engine, but down low it looks like you got the bucket company. What are you running through there? Because I know it can handle a variety of media and different ways to feed the plant. So what's your method there?
That's Mother's Earth. We got Mother's Earth cocoa perlite mix right out of the bag. Nothing special about that as far as other than I open the bag
70-30?
and try not to make a mess. Yep. 70-30 in there. And basically our IPM is monitoring. I'm looking forward to day 21. I'll tell you that though.
Have you had any
down
CalMag issues
here.
with that cocoa? Do you have any issues when you first put them in there without buffering it?
Let me find a piece of wood. No.
No.
No
What feed are you
CalMag
giving?
issues that I
Yeah.
can see.
Okay.
Some feeds are formulated for cocoa.
Yeah, we're running New Millennium, and it's basically New Millennium, right out of the gate.
Does the irrigation spray or just like come out like
Well, we're due for another shot. You want to see?
Let's see it.
sure?
So
Action
Yeah,
shot.
because
go-
that will add some oxygen, wouldn't it? If it's
they
it'll
just
definitely
Yeah.
add some, right?
they're like halos, right?
After it squirts,
Yeah.
we're gonna let Spartan Grown jump out, but I think he'll want to stay
You
and watch
got it.
this for a second.
So we go to this 23 seconds. So this is a 30-second batch, 30-second hit. So
How
everybody's
many
getting.
feedings do you do a day?
I usually do 2 on the weekends and 1 on the weekdays.
Oh wow. Okay. So not on
the
a timer.
weekends get a little not on a schedule because no, I've had some had a couple of mishaps. I'm gonna have another one right here because I was playing with something and I loosened it.
Okay. You
So
don't
then
trust
once
the
we're
system
done
enough
here-
to let it go on its own.
I've had a couple of spills. I've had a couple times where my runoff pump didn't quite pay attention to what it was supposed to be doing, and I take full accountability for it and putting a big puddle in my basement. But at the end of the day, I'm glad I don't have the plastic anymore. That was a great conversation. Do you need the plastic? No. Good. Boom. Going.
Some of the biggest operations on
You
the
guys
West
didn't
Coast.
have to say it more than once. I get rid of that plastic.
Some of the biggest operations out here on the West Coast, Jungle Boys being one of them, they have automated operations, but they still make sure that they have employees there to watch and make sure everything goes off smoothly.
Very
without a hitch.
intelligent.
So I wanted to give Spartan Grown, because I think they also may do that at Mid-Canico for all their waterings, a chance to, I'm going to unspotlight you. Sour Diesel Tangy,
You
thank
got
you
it,
so
man.
much for showing
Thanks.
us that garden. I'm going to give Spartan
No
Grown
worries,
a
man.
chance here to jump in and give any final thoughts and his shout outs of where we can find him.
I just want to shout out. You brought him up earlier, Potent Ponic Steve or Aquaponic Steve or Steve Reisner.
Steve Reisner.
Steve
Yes.
Reisner. He shared today on his story, and I've also shared it on my story, some information for a benefit for somebody in the cannabis community that was killed by a drunk driver. So there's information there if you'd like to donate. I just urge you, if you have it in your heart to do so, to check that out and help them out. Other than that, I don't have much more to add. Just awesome hanging out with you guys as usual. Sorry I didn't participate as much. I was kind of busy, but I still wanted to be here. So I was here. And shout out to chat. Again, sorry for not being in the hanging chat like I normally do as much, but I had to get some work done. So cheers, everybody. And then we'll see you next week.
You were still in there plenty, man. I saw you answering questions while you're making those seeds pop out and trimming through the wheat and the chaff, as we were kind of talking about a little bit earlier. That's a difficult process and tedious, time consuming. So I appreciate you coming on here and sharing your time with us. I know you're going to head on over to the Michigan Bros Grow Show. Shout out to all the guys over there. Skillbo1 is one of the first guys I started doing shows like this with, and he was in the chat earlier. So big shout out to Skillbo and also to Sequence. He's the one who made the cover to 50 Strains of Green possible. So big love and respect to you and all the guys at the Michigan Bros Grow Show. Cheers to you guys and have a great show tonight. I'll hopefully be able to jump in there and at least listen in, lurk in the chat for a little bit.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that. Cheers, guys.
Cheers,
right.
man.
Peace out, Spartan. You can find him at Spartan Grown, at Spartan Grown on
Peace out,
Instagram.
Spartan.
He also works at Mitten Canico on
See you later,
Instagram.
Spartan.
If you want to email him, you can email spartangrown@gmail.com. I know he usually gives those as his ways to contact him, but he didn't tonight. So for anybody who's new and doesn't know where to find him, definitely check out Spartan Grown. He's doing really great things in our community, as well as helping out many other people in lots of other shows. So lots of respect for Spartan Grown, and thankful that he was able to join us. Even if he was quiet this evening, the input that he shares is always much respected, and thankful that he's here with us. So Saudi Sultanji, very impressed with what you got going on. What are some of the genetics that you're growing? I heard some Irie genetics going on over there. Is it all Irie, or do you have other things as well?
Hey, what's up, Jack? Yeah, I can give you a quick rundown. We got Rocksteady by Irie Genetics. So we got Rocksteady 1, 2, 3. We're running some Canorado. Big fanboy of Canorado Genetics. They've just always been a really reliable for me. Real big fan of Canorado. We're running his meat pie. We got 5 of those. We're running Rock Buds. We got some of his gas grape alien stomper. We got 2 of those. And I got some key lime from Katsu Seeds. That was a little bit of a late bloomer, but she's gone ham as of the past 2 weeks. Once I flipped her to flower, she just morphed into just a nasty girl. She's crazy. She's huge. But
We talked a little bit about
wish
that
I had
earlier.
more of
when
that. But
Popping seeds, you never know. Sometimes when you flip to flower, sometimes they show you that true potential that they've got, and it just surprises you. Katsu does a lot of breeding with Bubba, which wasn't notoriously a super large yielder, and he's known for having some super quality stuff. So I'm excited to see what you pull out. Big fan of Rasta Jeff's work and also Canorado. They have meat pie sounds like interesting. There must be some sort of funky stuff in that cross, but they've done some stuff with the Sunday Driver that's gotten really popular out here on the West Coast. It seems like every dispensary carries a little bit of that, and some of their other work as well. So shout out to Canorado. I feel like they're not new at this point. They've been around for a few years killing it. So shout out to them. They're one of the, I would say, like newer generations. They're not brand new, obviously. They've been around for a while. And any overnight success is usually 10 years in the making, as Tommy from Detroit Nutrient Company once said. And I really tend to agree with that. So cheers to all those guys putting in the work when no one's watching and then blowing up and finally making it. So big respect to them and the genetics that they put out there. Including
yeah, we got some good stuff. He was
sorry, go ahead.
oh no, keep going. I kind of blew up my Zoom there. Sorry, Jack. Sorry.
No, it's all
Jack.
good. It's all good. I was just gonna say, including Brandon Rust, man. I'm honestly, I don't want to sound like I'm blowing smoke every week whenever you come on, but I really have been happy to see a lot of people growing out your gear and being excited about it and buying those packs and stuff selling out, and you making limited selections. And I really trust your taste. I've had the personal pleasure of trying some of the stuff that you grew and bred yourself, and I believe in what you're doing, and you have the passion for it so clearly. I mean, a lot of people, if they got sent to prison once, they'd fucking call it quits and wouldn't come back to the game. But this is really your life's work and your passion, and it's finally in a place now that you can shine. So I'm happy to see all the other people respecting the work that you put in and enjoying it just like I have. So we're at that 10-minute mark, so I guess we could get into those final shout outs and thoughts. So Brandon, do you have any final thoughts this week? And if not, we could get your shout outs and where to find you.
Sure. Yeah. Just I encourage everybody to grow your own food, grow your own medicine, try to live a little more self-sufficient. And it's the little things that count that can help you be more independent. So if you want to find my social media, it's right there on the bottom left of the icon at rust.brandon. And then if you go there, there's links in my bio to both Black Label Organics and Bokashi Earthworks. And it's always a good time to come here. I like to be here and talk to you guys. So thanks for having me. And thanks for all the listeners. I appreciate it. All the people that support what I'm doing.
Definitely a big respect to the chat. They make this show what it is. We had 150 tonight or so at one point, which is awesome to see. Thank you to all of them for showing up, and thank you to the panel for being here as well. I know everybody's busy, and to share their knowledge and time, it's big effort to commit to something every single week for 2 years plus in a row at this point. I'm thankful been able to continue to keep this thing going. So I want to give a chance for the American one next to give his final thought and shout out.
Jack, Brandon, Matthew, Dr. MJ, Saudi. It was great being on panel with you guys. Peace out, everyone in chat. Sour Tangy, you're killing it, dude. It's looking awesome in there. And Brandon, thanks for sharing all your information, dude. You're like next level, and I appreciate it a lot. And I appreciate everyone. So everyone have a great week this week. Kill it, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks so much for coming. Thanks so much for coming. And in honor of Sour Diesel Tangy, I've got a Tangy Dream cart that I've been puffing on over here. So Carvana is a company out here in California that I actually think makes a decent product. My wife got this for me from her delivery service, and it is tasty. So Sour Diesel Tangy, where can the people in the chat find you if they don't already know where to follow you?
Oh, thanks a lot, Jack. Yeah, thanks everybody for letting me show off a little bit. As far as I put a lot of work into it. I really appreciate all the help I got from the panel. If anyone wants to get a hold of me, I'm Sour Diesel Tangy, all one word on IG, and all one word at gmail.com. If you guys have any questions that you think I can answer, there's a lot of experts out there that you could hit up. But if you see anything here that in particular it's in my room, I've probably already broken it, burned it, melted it, or done it wrong. So feel free to reach out and hit me up. I can maybe I'll save you a few minutes of frustration. But I wouldn't be anywhere without cheap home grow. Ever since the corny music intro, you guys have helped me out immeasurably. And without this podcast, I wouldn't be anywhere. So I really my hat's off to all you guys, everyone on the panel and past and present. You guys have been awesome. I really appreciate it, and all the followers and everyone on the on YouTube that I chat with every week when I'm on the other side of the wall. It's been great. I really appreciate all you guys. So thanks, man.
Thank you, man. It means a lot. I know I've had similar sentiments said from a lot of the people in the chat, as well as people on the panel. This has just really been a amazing, really positive thing for I think all of us that continue to keep showing up and are really interested in these types of things. The conversation can be so different from night to night, and that's what I really enjoy about it. I feel like I learn something new every single week, and if not, I just really enjoy hanging out with what have become my friends over these few years. So it's just been an awesome time, and I want to give Dr. MJ a chance to give his final thoughts and shout out.
Hey, I got to shout out Small Poker in the chat, because as I'm like getting ready to do my final shout outs, I'm like, Small Poker's shouting out all my things for me. So he's mentioned the Spring Autoflower Challenge, which is coming up in just over a month. It starts on 4/20. It's going to be a lot of fun. Sign up for the Spring Autoflower Challenge, even if you want to grow photos. We'll have a lot of cool prizes for that. And we have a giveaway in 11 days. We're giving away the Grower's Choice ROI E720, which is a big, beautiful light. All you have to do to enter that drawing is write a strain review. So head over, write a strain review, get a draw number for that. And we have a new prize for international growers too. That's limited to growers in the US, but I got a new prize that we can ship around the world. So we got another one for everybody outside of the US. And the other thing I wanted to mention was I had a new video. I posted a new video yesterday, and in that one, I break apart a $1,000 LED grow light with a hammer. So check it out. And it was a pleasure to be on with Sour Diesel Tangi. The rest of the panelists, sorry I showed up late and hit it hard, but that's my style. And grower love to everybody in the chat. Grower love to the panel. Thank you, Jack. And I'll be back next week.
We're always happy to have you, and appreciate all the things that you're doing with the lights and the community that you're building over on cocoforcannabis.com. The articles and information are top quality, and the videos, I've continually been watching them because it's kind of like almost like cars in this industry a little bit. It's like, what's the new brightest light or best spread or whatever, like whose company's got the top specs. And even if I don't get it, I'd like to know and see who's growing with them and then how it ends up working out for them, because sometimes people have these great lights and then they don't necessarily put it to use because they don't necessarily have that CO2 and everything else dialed in. So it's a lot of things, even if you're growing organic, hydroponic, whatever it is, it's all sort of like you got to dial it in like a Top Thrill dragster, it's every single thing has to be dialed in perfectly.
This review that I did yesterday, I posted, it was the Geek Light, the Geek Beast Plus, and it's such an interesting light, super highly efficient. They do a different pattern of the distribution of diodes, but I had to take it apart with a hammer. So there's pros and cons. Anyways, it's definitely an interesting one.
Yeah, it was like 2.42 or something, if I remember.
2.43, yeah. The highest, the only one that beat that in my test was the chilled prototype.
Yeah, so highest as far as like for like cars, it'd be the fastest production vehicle on the market, something that you can actually go out and buy right now, as far as that efficiency, which is
but it would be like the car with the best gas mileage.
I
mean, that would be like the efficiency argument, really. That's what we're dealing with efficiency. And maybe you care more about horsepower than gas mileage, or maybe you care more about, range, like how far you can drive this car rather than gas mileage. So that's what I meant in the beginning. There are other metrics to look at. And yeah, I was really impressed with the photon efficiency on it, but I wasn't as impressed with the distribution, really, which is interesting because it was all designed for good distribution.
Yeah, I was surprised as well. The corners were a little bit weaker than I was expecting because it almost filled the space perfectly, but it was a little bit almost too small for the space that it was designed for, but too big for a little bit smaller space, if that makes any sense. So really interesting conversation on that. But I don't want to forget Matthew Gates, our IPM specialist and just generally awesome person and individual. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to give you a chance to give your final thoughts and shout out.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I want to echo, of course, that the chat has been very nice and lively and asking really cool questions, and that I appreciate that I've had good influence on people in this way. I think similar to what Sour Diesel Tangi was saying, and also kind of what Dr. MJ Coco and many of us on the panel try to strive to do is help as many people grow effectively as possible. And for me, that's really great because it makes my job and everyone else's job fighting pests easier. So if you want to make that job easier for yourself and everyone else, I encourage you to take a look at my information that I have arranged on my YouTube channel, Zenthanol, the same one I'm using on the chat. You can also find a bunch of really cool information that I talk about on Instagram at SyncAngel. And you'll be able to see me incorporate native flora and fauna with Saigo International with some videos that are coming up on Instagram and Facebook and possibly also my YouTube channel. So check out my channel for those pieces of information.
Thank you again for joining us, Matthew. Always enjoy your input on these shows, and the content that you make is, like I often say about other things, top notch. I think as far as IPM is considered for free content we put out there on YouTube, it's a invaluable resource. Like, it's something so good for the whole entire community that if they take the time to learn and benefit from it, it'll greatly help them in the long run. It's helped me already, and I know it's helped many others. So we appreciate your time making all that content and sharing your time this evening. For anybody who wants to find me, I'm at Jack Greenstock. I'll do the side lean and let everybody find where they can find me on Cannabis as well as Instagram. If you want to find me on Twitter, it's Jack_Greenstock. If you want to email me, jackgreenstock47@gmail.com. I was thinking about doing Cannabis Jeopardy maybe like as a night for this show, but I think it's maybe something I don't want to like rob the audience who really likes the show each week of this show, including the panel members and myself. So in the future, I wanted to put out there, we're going to be trying to do a Cannabis Jeopardy maybe in another time slot. But I want to put out for crowdsourced questions, like maybe think of topics that you would like to see and even write like certain questions as an example, like, oh, this would be a cool category, like terpenes. It's like name that terpene and then give a
Got to do an IPM one.
an IPM one, strain, like this parent plus that parent. And then you have to say, what is Blue Dream? It'll be like Santa Cruz Haze crossed to Blueberry or whatever. So we'll have all sorts of different categories, but I think it'd be something really fun and interesting to do with the community. And you could just like raise your hand or buzz in, say your name. I don't know. We'll figure out a way to do it, but it's something I think would be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to trying to implement, but without further ado, we are all done for this evening. Go check out the Michigan Bros Grow Show. Peace and love, everybody. Jack Greenstock signing out.
Grow love, everyone.